In a town gasping for breath, a young black woman fights to keep her family's legacy alive, one cup of coffee at a time. When a lone Hell's Angel, burdened by grief, walks through her diner door, prejudice rears its ugly head in the form of local law enforcement. She stands her ground, an act of simple kindness that costs her dearly, turning the town against her. But what happens next is a testament to an unspoken code, a brotherhood that repays decency with overwhelming force, leaving a community stunned and a struggling diner reborn in the most unexpected way imaginable. Before we see hundreds of bikers roar into Willow Creek and change everything, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. This story of courage and unexpected allies is one you won't want to miss. Sarah Jenkins's hands, chapped and reddened, moved with practiced efficiency, scrubbing down the worn Formica countertop of Sarah's place for the third time that morning. The breakfast rush, if 4 weary farmers and a pair of long-haul truckers could be called such, had dwindled, leaving the old diner steeped in a familiar quiet, broken only by the lazy squeak of the overhead fan battling the thick summer air. Sarah glanced at the antique cash register, a relic of her father's prime, mentally tallying the meager bills inside. Her stomach knotted. It wasn't enough. Not for the overdue electric bill tucked inside her apron pocket, its angry red final notice a constant throb of anxiety. Not for the relentless stream of medication costs for her father's ongoing care. Just a few more months, she whispered, the promise hollow even to her own ears. It was the same mantra she'd clung to since packing her life in Atlanta into a single suitcase and returning to the slow, sad decay of Willow Creek to save what was left of her family. Outside, Main Street lay deserted under the oppressive heat, a ghost town in the making. Closed shop windows stared back like vacant eyes, each one a stone on Sarah's chest. First, the textile mill shut down, then the hardware store, then Miller's grocery. Now, Sarah's place, her family's heart and soul, was bleeding out, kept alive only by her sheer, stubborn will. The bell above the door jingled, a sound her father, Elijah, had once loved, before the stroke stole his voice and half his strength. Sarah turned, cleaning cloth still in hand, and froze. A man filled the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, his frame encased in dusty black leather that had seen too many miles. His beard was a thick, unruly gray. Tattoos snaked up his arms, telling stories Sarah couldn't decipher. But it was the patch on his worn leather vest that seized the diner in an icy grip. A grim, skeletal reaper, clutching a scythe, the unmistakable emblem of the Hell's Angels. The few remaining customers stiffened. Mrs. Gable, engrossed in her crossword by the window, gasped, her hand flying to her pearls. Mr. Henderson, a farmer Sarah had known since she was a child, lowered his coffee mug with a sharp, nervous clink. Even the old radio seemed to crackle with static, as if the diner itself held its breath. The biker moved towards the counter, his worn boots thudding against the linoleum, with a slow, heavy rhythm, like a distant war drums. He chose a stool at the far end, away from the others, his wide shoulders hunching slightly, as if trying to make himself invisible. Sarah remembered her father's oft-repeated words. Everyone's money spends the same at Sarah's place. Treat 'em all with respect, girl. Still, her heart hammered against her ribs. She wiped her damp palms on her apron, grabbed a plastic-coated menu, and filled a glass with iced water. "Welcome to Sarah's place," she said, forcing her voice into the easy, welcoming cadence she offered every customer, even as the tension in the room prickled against her skin. "Today's special is chicken fried steak with mashed potatoes, made fresh this morning." The biker looked up then, and Sarah's breath caught. His eyes, a startling pale blue, were rimmed with red, as if he hadn't slept in days. They seemed strangely at odds with the hard, weathered lines of his face. They weren't the eyes of a man seeking trouble. They were the eyes of a man losing a desperate fight. "Coffee," he said, his voice low and rough, like gravel, yet with an underlying softness. "Black. Whatever's quickest. Been on the road since before sunup." As she poured coffee from the battered pot, Sarah noticed his hands, large, calloused, but trembling faintly as he reached for the mug. A hospital bracelet, stark white plastic, peeked out from beneath his leather cuff. Her chest tightened. She'd seen that look, that tremor, too many times during her nursing rotations in the cancer ward. In a town gasping for breath, a young black woman fights to keep. Long ride ahead of you still? She asked casually, setting the heavy mug down before him. He nodded slowly, his gaze distant. Heading back to Willow Creek Medical, he said, his voice thick with exhaustion. My daughter, Lily. The words cracked, breaking apart like ice under strain. He dropped his gaze to the swirling black surface of his coffee. Sarah swallowed past the lump forming in her throat. She didn't pry, didn't ask for details. She simply offered a gentle smile. Toast and eggs coming right up, she said warmly. 6 minutes tops. As she turned to call the order into the small kitchen, Sarah felt the weight of the stares from across the room. Suspicious, disapproving, fearful. She knew what this act of simple service might cost her in a town like Willow Creek, but she also knew what was right. And Sarah Jenkins had never been one to back down from doing what was right. The bell above the door jingled again, sharper this time, slicing through the diner's low hum. Sarah didn't need to turn to know who had entered. She felt it in the sudden, sharp intake of breath from Mrs. Gable, the way Mr. Henderson hunched lower over his coffee, the air itself stiffening. Officer Mike Evans and Deputy Karen Bell swaggered in, their uniforms crisp, badges gleaming. Evans, with his easy arrogance and reputation for heavy-handedness, made a beeline for the counter, his eyes locking instantly onto the biker. A slow, ugly smile spread across Evans's face. Well, well, he said, his voice loud enough to carry, deliberately disruptive. Don't see your kind in Willow Creek too often. The biker didn't look up, just continued to sip his coffee, steadying his trembling hands. Sarah felt a flush of anger rise to her cheeks, tightening her grip on the counter's edge. Just grabbing some breakfast, officer, the man said quietly, his voice rough but undeniably respectful. Deputy Bell stood a step behind Evans, her posture stiff, her eyes darting uncomfortably between Sarah and the biker. Evans leaned an elbow on the counter, a deliberate invasion of the biker's space. Maybe we should check his ID, Sarah, he suggested, his tone laced with false concern. Make sure he's not one of those reapers we got bulletins about, stirring up trouble. Sarah's heart pounded. The man had done nothing, absolutely nothing. But Evans was already circling, a vulture sensing prey. The biker's hand moved slowly, carefully, towards his jacket pocket. Evans's hand instinctively dropped to the holster on his hip. Sarah stepped forward, her voice sharper than she intended. He's a paying customer, Mike, she stated firmly. Same as anyone else who walks through that door. Evans turned his head, his smirk widening. Same? That's rich, Sarah. He gestured contemptuously at the patch on the biker's vest. You know what that means, don't you? Drugs, guns, trouble. The biker finally looked up, his pale blue eyes, weary but unyielding, locking onto Evans's. You don't know anything about me, he said, his voice low but steady. Evans barked a humorless laugh. I know enough, and I know better than to trust a man wearing that death patch. Sarah's hands were trembling now, but she stood her ground. Every eye in the diner was on her. She remembered her father's words. Judge by actions, not appearances. Always. You don't have the right to harass him just because you don't like how he looks, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the fear coiling in her stomach. Evans straightened, his expression hardening. You're making a mistake, Sarah, he warned, his voice a low threat. This town doesn't take kindly to people siding with trouble. The biker pushed his plate away, reaching for his wallet, but Sarah placed her hand firmly on the counter between them. Your money's no good here today, she said, her voice unwavering. Breakfast is on me. The biker blinked, surprised, a flicker of something unreadable. Gratitude, perhaps, crossing his face. Evans snorted in disgust, tossing a few crumpled bills onto the counter for his own coffee. Let's go, Karen, he barked, spinning on his heel. Deputy Bell hesitated a moment longer, her gaze lingering on Sarah with an expression that might have been apology, before she followed Evans out. The bell gave a sour jangle as the door swung shut. An uneasy silence descended upon the diner. Sarah busied herself, clearing plates, ignoring the whispered conversations that bloomed like weeds in her wake. The biker finished his coffee in a few quick gulps, leaving a $20 bill tucked under his cup, despite Sarah's earlier refusal. He stood, adjusting his worn leather jacket. "Name's Jack Riley," he said simply, his voice gruff. "Folks call me Wolf." Sarah managed a small, genuine smile. "Sarah Jenkins. Safe travels, Mr. Riley." Wolf nodded once, a deep, solemn gesture, then turned and walked out into the blazing afternoon sun. Sarah watched him go, a tight ache forming in her chest. She had no illusions. Small towns had long memories for perceived transgressions, short tempers for those who crossed unspoken lines. She had just drawn a very bold line in the sand. The afternoon crawled by. The few customers who trickled in offered tight smiles or avoided eye contact altogether. When Sarah finally flipped the open sign to closed that evening, she slumped into a booth, dropping her face into her hands. She hadn't wanted this fight. But when she closed her eyes, she saw Wolf Riley's trembling hand, the glint of the hospital bracelet, a silent cry for help. She remembered the kindness of strangers during her own lowest moments, and she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, she couldn't have acted any differently, even if it cost her everything. As she locked up, she found it. A crude piece of cardboard taped to the glass door. Angry red letters scrawled across it. "No biker lovers. No troublemakers." Her stomach plummeted. She ripped it down, crumpling it fiercely, but the message burned into her memory. Trouble had arrived at Sarah's place, and this, Sarah knew, was only the beginning. Hat night, long after the last light in Sarah's place flickered out, Sarah made her way through the hushed, sterile corridors of Willow Creek Medical. The scent of antiseptic clung to the air. She paused at room 214, her fingers brushing the cool wood of the doorframe before she pushed it open. The room was dim, the only light emanating from the soft glow of monitors beside the bed, their steady beeps marking each precious breath. Her father, Elijah Jenkins, still managed. He lay motionless, eyes closed, his once powerful frame frail beneath the thin hospital blanket. Sarah pulled a chair close, taking his warm but distant hand. "Hey, Dad," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It's me." She stroked his hand. "Rough day at the diner. I might have picked a fight with Officer Evans." A small, tired laugh escaped her. "But you raised me to speak up. And there was this man, big guy, biker. Looked like trouble." She paused. "But he wasn't, Dad. He was just a father. His daughter's in bad shape. Right here in this hospital. Lily. Stage 4. And the way Evans treated him. Like he wasn't even human." The monitors clicked softly. "I don't know if I did the right thing," she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. "Business is bad. Folks are already talking. Someone left a sign on the door, like I betrayed the town by showing a little kindness." She blinked back tears. "But I remembered what you always said. Treat people by how they act, not how they dress. And that man, Wolf, he didn't need judgment. He needed grace." She leaned closer. I think you'd be proud, Dad." She kissed his hand, then rose, a quiet strength settling within her. She had her father's backbone. That under that and the diner were all she had left to fight with. Sarah arrived at the diner before sunrise, unlocking the door with a heavy heart. The threatening sign was gone, burned to ash in a trash barrel, but the town's silence was louder than any insult. The usual breakfast crowd, Mrs. Gable, the truckers, the old chess players, didn't appear. By 9 a.m., the coffee was cold. By 10, Sarah was wiping already spotless counters. At noon, she stared at the nearly empty tip jar, wondering how much longer Sarah's place could survive. Then, the bell rang. 2 strangers entered. The man, 50s, tall, lean, weathered, wore a small silver skull pin. Grim Reapers. The woman beside him, same age, long gray braided hair, wore a denim vest with the same insignia, her eyes soft, smile gentle. "Sarah Jenkins?" the man asked. Sarah nodded, wary. "I'm Tom Riley. This is my wife, Susan, Wolf's brother." Relief washed over Sarah. "Wolf told us what happened," Susan said. "He wanted to come, but he's with his daughter, Lily." "How is she?" Sarah asked softly. Tom's face clouded. "Stage 4, Last shot with a new treatment. I'm so sorry. He said you were kind, Susan continued, when no one else would be. Stood up to the police. You looked at the man, not the patch. Sarah shrugged. He needed a meal, not a fight. Tom smiled faintly. Sometimes those are the same thing. He set his empty coffee cup down. We wanted to say thank you. With support. Support? Sarah asked, puzzled at it. Tom just smiled. Give it a few minutes. Then the sound began. A low rumble, distant thunder, growing louder, closer. Sarah rushed to the window, her breath catching. Down Main Street from both directions, the horizon shimmered with chrome. Motorcycles. Dozens. No, hundreds. They roared into view, engines snarling, filling the street, surrounding Sarah's place. Men and women, young and old, vests stitched with Grim Reaper's chapters from across the state. Some carried flowers. All came for one reason. The engines cut. Riders dismounted. A wave of leather and denim. Sarah stared at Tom, stunned. What is this? Susan smiled. Wolf told his chapter. They told others. You treated one of us like a person. That means something. But over 200 people. Why? Tom's eyes were steady. Because when the world turns its back on us, we remember the ones who didn't. The first rider stepped inside, quiet, respectful, nodding to Sarah as if she were royalty. Tables filled, booths overflowed. I don't have enough food, Sarah stammered. Tom grinned. Taken care of. Susan called your suppliers. Trucks are on their way. Costs covered. By who? By us, Susan said simply. Consider it an investment in kindness. Townsfolk began to gather across the street, whispering, staring. Then, cautiously, some crossed over. Sarah's old classmate David grinned. Still serving those biscuits? Sure am. Sarah laughed, relief and disbelief warring within her. Have to share a table, though. Not a problem, David said, sliding in beside a woman with a pink mohawk and a Reapers Never Quit patch. More locals followed. Conversations started, hesitant, then easier. Sarah watched, wonder blooming in her chest. Her diner, her father's diner, buzzed with life, with possibility. The bell jingled one more time. Jack Wolf! Riley stood in the doorway, exhausted, jacket dusty, but a smile tugging at his lips. Hope you don't mind, he said quietly. Brought a few friends. Sarah met him halfway. Not at all, she said, her voice thick. Come in. Saved you a seat. The afternoon sun dipped, casting golden shadows as Sarah's place pulsed with an energy Willow Creek hadn't seen in years. Sarah was a whirlwind. Coffee, pancakes, burgers, fries. Delivery trucks arrived as Tom promised. Bikers unloaded crates without being asked. Friends Sarah had called, even neighbors she wasn't sure liked her, showed up to help, caught in the unspoken understanding that something special was happening. Every table was a mix of leather vests and local faces. Mrs. Gable animatedly discussed quilting with a woman whose biceps could bend steel. David taught dominoes in a back corner, laughter echoing. Even Deputy Karen Bell slipped in quietly, accepting coffee from Sarah, with a nod that spoke volumes. Sarah paused, leaning against the pass-through, soaking it in. This was her father's dream. A place of welcome, good food, shared company, judgment left at the door. The bell jingled again. The diner hushed. A massive man entered. White-bearded, leather vest stretched tight, emblazoned. President, Grim Reaper's MC, Riverside Chapter. Sarah stepped forward, heart thudding. He smiled warmly, extending a hand. You must be Sarah. Name's Robert Jones, but folks call me Preacher. They shook. You've made quite an impression, Sarah. Preacher turned, raising a hand. The room quieted. Wanted to thank Miss Sarah Jenkins, he began, gesturing proudly. When others turned their backs, she didn't. When others judged a man by his patch, she saw the father. Nods and murmurs of agreement rippled. In our world, Preacher continued, loyalty and respect are everything, so I want it known. Sarah's place, from this day forward, rides under the protection of the Hell's Angels. A cheer erupted, rattling windows, Boots stomping, fists pounding tables. Tears stung Sarah's eyes. She caught Wolf's proud smile across the room and smiled back, trembling. Preacher wasn't done. And if anyone in this town has a problem with that, his tone firmed, they'll have a problem with all of us. He looked directly at Deputy Bell, who sat stiffly, coffee halfway to her lips. Karen swallowed, then nodded once, slowly. Satisfied, Preacher grinned, flashing a gold tooth. "Now, who's ready for pie? Heard it's the best in 3 counties." Laughter broke the tension. Sarah, wiping her eyes, hurried to the kitchen. The gathering spilled into the streets. Music poured from a portable speaker. Neighborhood kids on tiny bikes weaved through chrome giants. Old-timers shared stories with bikers. Even Sarah's father, Elijah, ventured out in his wheelchair, pushed by a young rider, a faint smile on his face. It was more than a good day. It was history. In the center, Sarah Jenkins, tired, a little scared, but filled with a fierce, burning hope. She saw Wolf talking with Tom and Susan, his daughter Lily's hospital bracelet a fragile promise on his wrist. Sarah crossed to him. "Hey!" Wolf's face lit up. "Lily, good news today. Early signs. New treatment's working." Relief flooded Sarah. "That's amazing!" She hugged him fiercely. He hugged back, strong, sure. "She wants to meet you," Wolf said, his voice gruff. "Said you sound like the kind of woman she hopes to be." Sarah blinked back fresh tears. "I'd like that a lot." As twilight painted Willow Creek in soft purples and golds, the last bikes rumbled away, leaving the scent of engine oil and laughter lingering. Sarah stood on the diner steps, watching them go. Behind her, the clatter of washing up, but out here, it felt like the middle of a miracle. She closed her eyes, breathing in pie, leather, summer dust, the smell of hope. Tom and Susan Riley approached, Tom holding a brown paper package. "From all of us," he said. Inside, a custom black leather vest, stitched across the back, Sarah's place, encircled by Friend of the Reapers. Below, a smaller patch, protected. Sarah traced the stitching, speechless. Tom clapped her shoulder. "You stood up. Most people don't." Susan's eyes shone. "We don't forget kindness." Tucked inside was Wolf's note. "Thank you for seeing the man, not the jacket." Lily's smiling again. "Can't wait for you to meet her." "Wolf!" Sarah pressed it to her chest. Later she hung the vest beside her father's old apron. The bell jingled. Officer Mike Evans stood awkwardly inside, hat in hand. "Coffee?" Sarah asked lightly. He nodded. "Please." She poured, sliding it across. He looked like he wanted to say 100 things. Finally a stiff nod. "Good turnout today," he muttered. Sarah smiled slightly. "Town's changing," he added. Sarah didn't argue. She just went back to wiping the counter, leaving Evans to his coffee in the fading light. The days that followed found a new rhythm. Sarah's place stayed busy. Locals, travelers, bikers. Tips overflowed. Willow Creek thawed. Mrs. Gable traded pie recipes. Mr. Henderson brought his grandkids. Deputy Karen Bell dropped by in plain clothes. And Sarah, the steady heartbeat, served coffee, flipped pancakes, laughed, listened, lived. Every so often she'd glance at the vest, feel its solid weight, and remember, a hot coffee, a kind word, a refusal to look away. Sometimes that could change everything. At Sarah's place, it wasn't about patches, skin color, or past mistakes. It was about showing up, standing up, offering a seat at the table. No judgment, just good food, a warm smile, a place to be seen. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. Sarah Jenkins's simple act of kindness, her refusal to judge, didn't just save a struggling diner. It revitalized a community and forged an unlikely alliance. This story reminds us that compassion is a powerful currency, and standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult, can create ripples of positive change far beyond what we can imagine. It's about seeing the person, not the label, and offering dignity to everyone. If Sarah's courage and the biker's loyalty touched your heart, help share this inspiring story of hope and unexpected friendship. Hit that like button, subscribe for more meaningful narratives, and let us know in the comments what acts of kindness have made a difference in your life. Thank you for watching.